Welcome back, everybody, to the Daily Racing Show here at RacePlazaMedia. My name is Milan.
My name is Pia.
And today we're going to talk about the MotoGP finale.
Yes!
In Barcelona!
Exactly.
Obviously, the makeup race for the
Valencia.
cancelled Valencia GP due to the floods. So it was a very different race compared to the original Barcelona GP that was in May, because obviously in November it's much cooler.
Yeah,
so
temperature is very different.
The commentators also made a note that they weren't able to prepare the track as much as they would usually. I don't know exactly what it entails, but I guess they were saying that the track was a little dirty, and sometimes that's why the lines were unusual that the riders were taking. That being said, before we get into who the champion is, the race was...
It was okay.
We did also watch the sprint race.
We did. I mean, I watch more of the sprint races than you do. You don't usually watch them. Just because there's so much racing to watch, it can be a lot.
Maybe there's also a lesson to be learned from that.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure.
We'll get into that in just a second. But yeah, I'm just not a sprint race guy. I don't like it especially in F1. I hate it. I think specifically in F1, I think it also disadvantages a lot of the smaller teams.
Yeah, I think for MotoGP, it's a little bit different.
It is.
Yeah. There's a lot more exciting racing, there's a little bit more variation of like who's in a podium, who's in the top 10, at least from my experience from this year. I didn't watch all of the 20 sprint races. I watched, I would say, maybe a third of them this year, because also honestly going into it, I didn't realize that it's for every weekend.
Yes, absolutely.
That they had that. So now that I know, we'll see if my decision will change going into next year. But going into this weekend, there was, of course, the big question. There was a big rematch of last season. We had Jorge Martin potentially in contention or he was leading going into the weekend. Will he be able to remain the lead? Will he be able to have a good weekend and win the race and the championship, or more the championship than actually the race, because he didn't have to win neither the sprint nor the main race. And then,
spoiler alert, he did not.
Exactly, yeah, he did not. And then on the other hand, we have Pecco Bagnaia, the two-time world champion, exactly, back-to-back two-time world champion. It was really... he was going into it. They've been going back and forth a lot. He has won the most featured races or main races. Yeah, exactly. This season compared to anybody else. So it was like he could win. There was a little bit of a point gap, which made it difficult going into the weekend.
After the sprint race, so Pecco Bagnaia ended up winning the sprint race. Yes. And so going into the main race, it was a 19-point gap between Jorge Martin and Pecco Bagnaia.
Yes.
However, that meant the only way, essentially, Jorge is not going to clinch the championship is if he finishes in 9th or further down.
Yeah, exactly. Which is not...
It's not something that he does, because he is what I think everyone would agree with. He's Mr. Consistent. For this
season, he's been really, really, really consistent. Yes. He's won the most sprint races, if I'm not mistaken.
So this is really interesting. So, of course, big congratulations to Jorge Martin for becoming MotoGP champion.
Yes.
Even though, my heart was, I am a Pecco Bagnaia guy. I'm very, very happy for him because what he's done is absolutely exceptional, winning MotoGP.
Yeah.
And then also the Ducati has been very, very strong. And now this was probably his last time on a Ducati for a long time, because he is switching teams.
Yeah, to Aprilia. I think it's going to be at least 3 years is his contract, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll see. So it was really his last chance, or his most realistic chance for the foreseeable future. And he did so as an independent rider. The first time independent rider is world champion. So huge congratulations to him.
Absolutely.
I was so excited. I mean, my favoritism I've been going back and forth all season. Obviously, I'm repping, where is he? Here, the 93, which he also had an excellent race after having like a...
bad weekend.
Weekend, exactly. He ended up on the podium, which is beautiful. Second place.
Mark Marquez.
You
guys don't know who 93 is.
Sorry, I didn't know you guys didn't know. No, just kidding. It's not like I'm a professional either. But I was really excited that he, of course, did well, and he ended up clinching the third rider third place in the overall rider championship.
Yeah.
He was able to take that away from Enea,
yeah.
which is a bummer. I love Enea too. Enea seems like a really cool guy.
I think Enea has the opposite problem of, or is the opposite a little bit of Jorge Martin, in that he's not as consistent. When he's good, he's very good.
Yeah.
But he's just not very consistent in his riding. And I think maybe in the end that also costs a seat at Ducati because he is leaving. And throughout the beginning of the season, it was actually very highly speculated that Jorge Martin will go to the prime Ducati team, to the main Ducati team.
Next to Pecco.
Yeah, and will be next to Pecco. And then Ducati did a full 180 and they selected the one and only Marc Marquez.
Yes.
The one thing that I want to talk about also that talks about Mr. Consistency is that Pecco Bagnaia has won 11 Grand Prix this season. He's won 11, right? Jorge Martin
out of 20.
Out of 20, right? Jorge Martin has won 3. He has won 3 main events.
Oh, I didn't realize.
He has won 7, and Jorge Martin ended up winning 7 sprint races. But overall, he was 31 times on the podium.
Yeah, 31 times out of 40.
Out of 40, he was
podiums.
And this is exactly why he won.
Yeah.
You know, Pecco Bagnaia unfortunately wasn't as consistent. I think it was 4 races ago because he won the last 3 back to back to back. He crashed out.
Yeah.
And I think that ended up breaking any type of chance of him winning it.
Yeah.
Because at that point, it was too much of a gap. And like Jorge Martin being Jorge Martin, like a lot of times Jorge did the quote unquote the safe strat. He was like, you don't have to win this race.
Yeah.
Just coming second will secure you enough points to, you know, continuously like etch away that that momentum.
And I thought it was very impressive because going into MotoGP, this is obviously our first season. If you've been with us this year, you know that. And so we're very new to all of these riders. Of course, I had heard about Valentino Rossi. I had heard about Marc Marquez, but I didn't have a connection to them quite as much. So now I
think Marc Marquez was the only person I knew of going into this.
On the grid. Yeah, exactly. So it was a lot of new people to kind of get familiar with, different teams, different bikes, and all these things. So it was, I forgot what my point was.
Sorry, it's me because I interrupted.
Yes. No, that's totally fine. But okay.
While you're thinking,
yes.
So I will say though, like I know the season literally just ended, and I'm so excited already for next year.
Oh, 100%.
I'm so excited because like there's so much movement, and we'll get into that in just a second.
Yes.
Like the teams and who's gonna be where.
Okay, now I remember my point. But continue.
I think it is really, really interesting. And sorry, the last thing I wanted to point out is so Jorge Martin won 3 main events, right? Marc Marquez won 2 main events, right? But Marc was crashing out.
But then again, there were almost, I think, 100 points difference between the second place Pecco Bagnaia now and third place Marc Marquez in the overall rider championship. So it shows quite a point different because there was a lot more movement behind Jorge and Pecco on the podium and in positioning and stuff like that.
And I mean, not to take away from Marc, also like he obviously has he's riding on the older Ducati.
Yes, no,
it's
for
the 2023, not the 2024.
Yeah,
and however, he did make it onto the podium this year.
Yes.
You know, and he did score a win after like over 1,000 days. So,
yes.
I know that he's hungry.
Oh, I'm so excited for next season for him and Pecco on the top Ducati.
And I really hope that, like, once again, like, I'm a Pecco Bagnaia guy, right? But I do hope that Jorge has a good season.
Oh, for sure. But what I was going to say, now that I remembered, so going into the 2024 MotoGP season, we didn't know a lot of the people. I didn't know a lot of these riders. So I was kind of, first impressions were the things that I was like, okay, I seem to like this guy. I seem to like this guy. And then things, of course, changed throughout the season. And that's why at the beginning of the season, I thought I would be a Pecco gal as well, because he seemed very professional and very like on point and obviously really good. Like, why wouldn't you root for the guy who's at the top? And then I thought my first impression of Jorge Martin were like, I had the feeling that he was a little bit more hot-headed, a little bit more temper. But then
it's not him at all.
No, exactly, because I think it was the first couple of interviews or something. He seemed a little bit more like fiery, and I was like, oh, I don't know if I
like
want
to.
Yeah, if that's. But then he surprised me because he was. Like, there was a couple incidences throughout the season where there was some really close calls or really tough fighting. But in the post-race interviews, he was always very professional. And, like, he didn't, like, obviously there are moments that people can get heated and you can talk smack, and like I completely understand it, but I almost
didn't need to also do it. Was he?
Yeah. But then I was like, I had, and then he apologized for it because, and that's what I kind of swayed me to the Jorge Martin team, that he was like, he has all of these
I think
emotions.
Mark just called and wants you to take this off.
No, that he has all of these emotions and the passion and stuff like that, but then he is, I guess maybe so much of a professional also that
he's able to
compartmentalize it. And he was also talking about that he's talking to like a therapist a lot to make sure he's in the present, and he's preaching that, and he's been vocal about that too, which I think is very impressive, especially because I feel like I'm associating a little bit to the MotoGP culture also, maybe a little bit of the machismo vibe out from the outside. From the outside. But now things are, my views are a little bit changing about it, but that's why I think I have more of an appreciation for, and then you could see him at the end when he crossed the finish line, he went down and he was crying, and he said that he was crying during like the last part of the final lap, and it's just like, anytime
he won at home, which is so beautiful, right? You become champion. It's at home.
Yes.
All the people are there to celebrate you. They did this whole thing at the end because he's the Martinator.
Yeah, his dad used to call him that growing up.
Terminator, and then they had like a whole box set up, and then he walks out with the like Terminator half mask.
Which I love that's such a MotoGP thing. Like first the fan interactions, but then also like those little bit more extravagant celebrations that you really
out and he shoots the eyes.
Yes, I think
and then there's
so
that
cool.
helmet, his celebration helmet. I think it's very, really cool. It's honestly what I miss in F1.
Yes.
I don't know why F1 doesn't do it. I don't know if it's also a little bit like difficult because obviously with the car you can't just kind of like drive around.
Yeah, but then they're also like, oh, you can't do donuts and stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't know the whole thing, but it's really fun coming from F1 to like seeing these drivers interact with the home crowd.
Yes.
And like they always stop, and then the marshals come and they congratulate them
and
hand
get
them
their flags,
and all this stuff. And usually you don't really see that in F1, especially after the race.
Yeah,
and
really I was gonna say like, oh, maybe because it's MotoGP is not that big, but MotoGP is huge. Yeah, it is not a small sport. Like, yes, it is smaller than F1, but it has so many fans, so many followers, such a huge audience. So it's not a small sport by any means. And but I love that they have those interactions and the celebrations and just the visible passion and love for the sport. Because in like you said, in Formula One, it seems measured sometimes.
I don't know if it's also like I understand why Max doesn't do it and maybe why Lewis didn't do it as much, because at some point if you're always winning it might comes off as gloating.
Yeah.
And it's usually not that much of a good look. That's why when Max won that last race, it was his first GP win in a long time.
Yeah.
He was so excited.
That was really nice to see.
That's awesome to see you excited because you should be, because you won.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So that's really, really cool about MotoGP. It's just awesome, the excitement. And now that Liberty Mutual acquired...
Liberty Media,
not
Mutual.
Liberty Mutual. We're sponsored by... No, we're not sponsored. Liberty Media. Hopefully this will help also make MotoGP even more popular.
Yes.
Kind of... I don't know if they're going to do something like Drive to Survive. I'm not interested in that.
No.
But if it helps getting people interested in the sport, I think that would be cool.
Yeah. So, but yeah, congratulations to Jorge, to the Martinator for the 2024 Rider World Championship. What a huge success. And I'm looking forward, because our goal is to eventually watch some of the older races.
Yeah.
Some of the past MotoGP history.
Like the reign of Valentino. That's really what I want to see.
Of course, exactly. I also want to see some of Marc Marquez's. But there's so many riders that obviously have won World Championship that had better seasons than they are seeing now. So I would like to see some of those. So that's down the line, obviously a goal of ours. But I'm, like you said, so excited for next season.
And I think next season will also be the season for me where I'm going to start paying attention more to the midfield. Because the first season back of watching F1, I was very focused on the front.
Yes.
Because like you're usually like, oh, who's like winning out there and who's scoring points. But then next year I already know a bunch of people, right?
Yes.
Because we only have,
three new people.
3 new riders. And so I'll be able to like pay attention more towards like the midfield or what's going on there. I think the championship fight will be really interesting.
Yeah.
I would love if it is not just between, you know, the Ducati riders. I think I would hope that Jorge would be in a good enough bike to at least put in a like being able to defend his championship, you know?
Yeah, to
Once
put
again,
up a
I'm
fight
not-
for it.
you
Yeah.
know, because that's why I was also rooting for Bagnaia originally, because it's like I do want the champion to always be able to like put on a fight at
yes,
least, you
yes,
know,
yes.
not to just roll over, you know.
Yeah, agreed. But yeah, I'm really excited to see if there's maybe somebody that we hadn't paid attention to this year that might be in the fight a little bit more next year. Of course, I'm expecting big action between Pecco as well as Mark.
Yeah.
It's going to be very interesting. I think the dynamic also.
I think so too, because especially because Enea was not really, at least this season, was never really a challenge for Pecco. You know,
Yeah, I mean,
he
not
was never
overall.
like someone who you like, oh, you know, you have the same drivers on the same bike riders, and then like, will there be? I don't think there was ever this thing where like Pecco had to worry about Enea like making a run for it.
Yeah.
Whereas Mark might very well be that person.
Yeah, that was something I was also nervous about for this final race, because Mark suddenly popped up there. So it was
He's like, "Hey,
Pecco,
guys."
Jorge, and Mark, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I love Mark, but I wanted Jorge to win. So I was like, just let Mark pass, let him get away, like out of like, so it's not, so you take away some of the danger. You know?
I don't think we ever specified the podium. The podium was
We got too
Pecco
excited.
Bagnaia, then it was Marc Marquez, and then on the third one, which is nice that he did make it on the podium.
Yes.
Because that would have been really lame.
Yeah, no, for sure.
It was
And
Jorge
then
Martin.
also like a huge shout out to Jorge's bestie.
Yes,
Aleix Espargaro. I mean, what a guy. Like it was his final race. He's going to be a reserve driver next season. He was racing for Aprilia, obviously. And then he went in there defending and like saving and helping Jorge. I mean, not that Jorge couldn't have done this by himself. He's been racing great all season, but he was there first fighting against Bastianini, keeping him behind him. Then he was fighting against Alex Marquez for laps and laps and laps on end. He wouldn't let him pass just to buy Jorge some time to not have to worry about anything. And then seeing him afterwards, the two of them first on the bike, they embraced right after the finish line. Then Aleix ran to like the podium celebration, like when they get off the bikes, and was right there, and Jorge just jumping on him. It was, I think it was just really nice to see this bromance. I'm sure a lot of the other riders are friends, and like I said,
friendly, I would say probably.
well, yeah,
more.
there's some more that are really good friends, because I'm sure they all grew up with each other partially, depending on, I mean, sure, more of the Spanish riders grew up with each other and Italian riders and stuff like that. But there's relationships amongst them, which I'm not yet that familiar with. So it was really just beautiful to see that. And the commentators were commenting on it constantly too.
Yes. Okay, so moving on from that.
Yes,
I think
go
we
for
said
it.
everything.
Yeah.
This is a hard pivot. Okay, so the one thing that they were commenting during the race that I thought was so devastating is about Joan Mir.
Oh.
So we just found out that Joan won the 2020 MotoGP Championship. And that this season he had 70% of the races he crashed out. Yeah. That's a lot of races.
And then even when he crashed out during this last race, they were like, "Oh yeah, it's the mere moment" or something like that.
It was about time.
Yeah, and it's just
it's very unfortunate. Yeah, because like 4 years ago you weren't on top.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know who won 2021, and then it was Pecco back to back.
Yeah.
Right? But so like I hope that he's able to, because next year he will still be with
I
Honda.
was surprised that
he
was
like he's able to like figure out what's causing this. I don't know if it's just the bike, because the other driver is Marini, and I'm gonna be honest, not someone I paid attention to, not someone that really rings a bell.
Yeah.
However, Joan Mir does ring a bell, because a lot of times he does pop up and you're like, oh, this person crashed
He's out. Yeah,
you know?
exactly. That
very,
makes
very
sense.
unfortunate.
Yeah.
But I think what we wanted to talk about before we wrap up this video is the changes that are upcoming from the 2024 lineup for next year.
Yes. Perfect. So first off, I guess we just can briefly talk about it in order. So Aprilia, now we know, of course, Jorge Martin will be joining Aprilia. And then next to him will be also another new rider for Aprilia. I'm always so confused about it. So I try to be very soft about it.
You say always like it with a B.
Yeah, because I don't know why I want
Aprilia.
Yeah, but in my head, I always think it might be Aprilia. So that's why I try to make it like...
Think about April.
Okay, Aprilia. Anyways. So now also new at Aprilia is Besecchi. So it's going to be...
Who was at the...
46.
Valentino Rossi's team.
Yes.
Then moving on to Ducati, we already said that Pecco is obviously staying with
the factory Ducati,
the factory team, and then Enea Bastianini is moving to the Red Bull KTM Tech,
like the second
3.
team, yes,
and his place will be taken by Marc Marquez, who's currently at the
Gresini team, the Gresini Ducati, which he is with his brother Alex, of course, and Alex is staying, but then we have a new rider joining him. Which how do
Go for it. Just there's no B in this.
Aldeguer? I don't know which his nationality is.
Aldeguer.
Yeah, Aldeguer.
Yeah.
So there you go. That's who's gonna be in the Gresini colors next year.
Then Honda, we have Jay Zarco. He's staying, and then we have another new rider coming in, a Thai rider, Chantra. He is currently, I think, in Moto2.
Yes, yeah. So he'll be joining next season.
He will be joining, and then Nakagami will be their reserve rider. I believe.
That was also a very emotional moment this season. His last Japan race, where, anyway, so next up we have.
I was gonna say the only team that stays, huh? Exactly the same.
Oh, yeah. No. I thought there was another team. Because it's Yamaha. That stays with Fabio Quartararo and Rins. And then also the Honda team, Honda Repsol team, is staying with Marini and Joan Mir. They're the two teams that have the same lineup this season as well as next season.
And then at the Red Bull KTM, what is it called?
Factory racing.
We have Brad Binder staying. However, the rookie this year, Pedro Acosta, who did really, really well, is getting a promotion, and he is taking Miller's seat, and he will be the secondary, or he will be taking that second seat. Not secondary driver. He is not someone who would.
No.
I am very excited also to watch him because he's already shown the signs of brilliance. He had this one race where he dropped down all the way to 8th and then went all the way back up until 3rd.
Yeah, he had some really beautiful moments this season.
But he did also have 4 races where he crashed out back to back.
Very inconsistent. But then moving on, we have another Ducati team, the Valentino VR46 team. We have Di Antonio. He is staying. And then Frankie Morbidelli will be joining the team instead of course, Besecchi, which we said, who's at Aprilia.
Which is really interesting that the Pramac team has a completely new...
Oh, yes.
It's interesting that there was... I don't know if there was no effort in trying to at least retain Jorge Martin, because hey, you have the guy who can win a championship and you're going to let him go. But, oh, no, never mind. I think he left also because he felt slighted by Ducati.
Well, and they're also not going to be Ducati anymore.
Okay.
Pramac is going to be Yamaha now.
Okay, that explains. But anyways, they will be next year. They will have Oliveira and Miller. Jack Miller will be joining their team.
Yes. And then, so we only have 2 teams left. First of all, we have the KTM, the second team with Enea Bastianini, which you had said, and then Vinales. Maverick, he's joining them now. He's moving away from Aprilia.
I don't know why the whole time I thought that Maverick was retiring.
Oh, it's Espargaro who's retiring.
I think I got him mixed up in this whole season. I was like, oh, wow, it's his last season. Glad he got that win in.
Yeah.
And stuff like
that was such a cool moment, too.
With the Batman.
Yes. Yeah. And then, do you want to talk about the last team?
Yeah, the American team, Trackhouse, will now have Fernandez and also a brand new rider, Agura.
Yes.
Which I believe is a Japanese rider.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting. We have a couple new people or 3 new people on the grid, but a lot of familiar faces. I'm glad that it's it's that we have a lot of familiar faces staying just because we're now more familiar with them.
Yes.
And I'm also excited to see how they fare on the different bikes for the people that are switching teams.
Yeah, especially because, like, for example, Marc Marquez, he had a horrible weekend. Like, they couldn't get it together. He wasn't the bike didn't feel good for him. And then the morning of the Grand Prix during practice, they made some adjustments, and then all of a sudden homeboy got second place.
Yeah.
So hopefully he won't have those issues next year on the in the main team. But it will also be interesting to see. I don't know how the dynamic is within the team if, you know, it's like, you know, Pecco uses this setup, so maybe you should try that as well. I don't know how much is shared because, like, in F1, you know that they're doing testing. You know, obviously Hamilton being right now the test dummy for Mercedes and stuff like that. So I don't know if they actually do that. It would be interesting to see.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, I'm looking forward to learning more and more about MotoGP, also more things that go on behind it, because this first year, it was definitely the focus was what was happening on the track as we're watching, and now that we're learning more and more about it, we will also be bringing out a overall year review or some of our highlights of the 2024 season. We'll put those into a video. If you want to let us know in the comments below what were your favorite moments, so we can see maybe we'll agree. And then also your what's it called? Not premonition, but what you
prediction.
think, your prediction. That's what it is. I was like, that's not the right word.
Next year, this guy will win.
Yeah, just let us know what you think about next season, what MotoGP or how MotoGP will look like then. Yeah, like we say, I'm stoked about it. I'm so glad that we watched it.
Yes.
Especially, we keep saying the first race that we watched this year was not good.
There were a few races, but we had a lot of good races.
For us, for newbies, we were enjoying those races.
I think Coda was the turning point for me.
Yes, I agree.
It was just a fantastic race where I'm like, oh, this is
good.
Really exciting.
Yeah, I agree. But I think that's all for today. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Remember,
subscribe.
Like what he said.
Comment. Let us know how you felt about the race, how you feel about Jorge Martin winning.
Yes. Let us know all your thoughts. And then on Thursday, we'll be bringing out our What to Watch video as per usual. So you find out what you can watch, where you can watch it, and when you can watch it. And we have some fun videos and plans coming up for December. And then I'm trying to hex them to watch it for December and then also for 2025. But we'll tell you more about that soon. So stay tuned.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.